The Biden Center at the University of Pennsylvania is coming under fire for the significant Chinese influence at the university think tank, thanks to millions of dollars in donations from China and no transparency. Joining us now to discuss what this means for the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee is attorney Paul Kamanar. Mr. Kamenar, can you bring us up to speed? Tell us what you know.
Yes, the National Legal Policy Center, who I represent, filed this complaint with the Department of Education, asking them to investigate the millions of dollars that the University of Pennsylvania and the Biden Center for Diplomacy received from China over the last several years. Their forms require them to disclose amounts of over $250,000, and they do list several of them coming from Chinese banks and so forth and so on. But there is millions of dollars that doesn't list a source in China. It just simply says anonymous. The one that really jumped off the page was one 2 years ago, May 2018, a gift from an anonymous donor in China for $14.5 million. And now the China influence is clear here at the University of Pennsylvania. They had a symposium at the end of January at the University of Pennsylvania where the Biden Center participated. This is at the height of the cover-up by China on the coronavirus, and there's not a peep by the Biden Center or the University of Pennsylvania about the China cover-up here yet. They come out and attack U.S. NATO allies Hungary and Poland for taking measures to stop the coronavirus, saying that they're acting undemocratic, even though they're doing nothing more than what governors here in the United States are. So we think there's a problem here. We want to get these contracts disclosed. We want to see what conditions are tied here and whether or not the Biden Center is beholden to China in terms of the kind of policies that should reflect the United States policies. And it's a national security problem, as Congress recognized. That's why they required this disclosure in the law 50 years ago.
You know, I'm sorry, Paul, I'm going to have to go to the White House right now with Kayleigh McEnany. Excuse me for breaking in. Let's listen in to Kayleigh.
Before I start my portion of the briefing, there were just a few things I wanted to note for you all. Pursuant to some of those very encouraging graphs we saw where the states moved from red and orange to green, and we saw the United States increasingly become green. It's encouraging to see that America's reopening alongside that, with data from Homebase noting that 2/3 of America's small businesses are opening. An Open Table study said Americans are now starting to dine out again. Another Homebase study, 67% of local food and drink businesses are open. Apple is saying Americans are driving and walking at near normal levels, and Google mobility data reflects the same. So it's encouraging to see America start to reopen and the great work President Trump has done for the faith community going into this weekend. We have a First Amendment. It's very important that we protect that. And these churches, these synagogues, these mosques, they are essential, and President Trump underscored that. And finally, before getting started, I wanted to note that the president, as you all are well aware, donates his salary to various initiatives and parts across the federal government. In this quarter, he will be donating his salary to HHS, Health and Human Services, to develop new therapies for treating and preventing COVID-19 so that we can safely reopen. Here's the check, amounted to $100,000 that will go directly from President Trump and his paycheck that he does not take, but rather donates it to various noble initiatives, including in honor of COVID this time and those who have passed and the studies underway. He'll be donating it to HHS. And with that, I will take questions from you all.
Kayleigh.
Yes.
A couple of questions to follow up on the president's announcement.
Kayleigh McEnany, we will keep tabs and see. It didn't look like she had any announcements per se. We'll keep tabs and see if any of the questions lead to news. Meantime, I believe Paul is still there. Anything that she said, Paul, you want to react to?
No, other than the fact of this coronavirus that indeed it's coming from China, and yet the Biden Center and the University of Pennsylvania hasn't said a word about it, not even a peep about what's going on there. And it makes sense because they're getting mega millions of dollars from China. They're not about to bite the hand that feeds them.
Paul, how much money are we talking about in total? And really, just tell us maybe your one burning question. Like, what is the one thing you want answered more than anything else?
Well, the totals in the last 3 years are $63 million altogether, of which $22 million is listed as anonymous. But what we want to do is get copies of these contracts and gifts to see what kind of conditions are put on them. We want it disclosed, and we're asking the Justice Department to file an enforcement action, because under the law, if they're not complying with it, the Justice Department can take them to court and recoup to the United States Treasury all the costs that it takes to investigate their noncompliance with the law. But this may go further. I mean, they may be skirting violations of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, for all we know, in which case they have to register as a foreign agent.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. Paul Kamanar bringing us up to date on some of the donations coming from China that were listed anonymous.